Now, get server-side props can sometimes be useful. I also want to mention how you would use it with a dynamic page. Here, before, when we used getStaticProps, we also needed getStaticPaths to let Next.js know which instances of this page should be pre-generated. Now, when using getServerSideProps, that's not the case. If I do have a UID.js file, UID in square brackets, so that I have a dynamic page for a single user, for different user IDs, if we use getServerSideProps, we don't need and we can't use getStaticPaths. So here, if I have the user ID page, and I get some props here, and here I then simply return h1 tag where I output props ID, something like this, and we then export this. If we do all of that, and I then also have this async getServerSideProps function, which we export. If we have this, then you will see that we don't need getStaticPaths at all. Here I just return an object, and now I'm interested in the concrete param value which I'm getting here. So we can get access to that through context. From there, we can still extract params, as I mentioned. And from params, we can then still get our user ID by accessing UID, since that's the identifier I picked between square brackets. And then in the props, which we pass to the component function, we could have the ID prop, since I'm accessing that here, and set this equal to user ID dash, and then let's say the user ID we extracted from the URL. Just to have some dummy code here that proves that this code actually did execute before this component function code ran. With that, if we want to test this, we first of all need to make sure we get rid of pid.js, because otherwise we have two dynamic segment pages on the same level in our pages folder. So Next.js wouldn't know if a value after / nothing should be a product ID or a user ID. And therefore, if I move the pid file into the products folder here, and in index.js, I update my links to go to /products/someID. Now we resolved this clash, because now we know that if it's just / something unrecognized, it will always target this user ID route. And now with that, if I bring back that development server, if we visit, let's say, /u1 for user 1, we see user ID u1 here. So it worked. And it did work without us adding getStaticPaths. Why? Because this runs on the server only anyways. So Next.js does not pre-generate any pages at all, and therefore, of course, it also doesn't need to know which pages to pre-generate, because there is no pre-generation. So unlike in the other case with getStaticProps, where we do pre-generate pages, and where we therefore do need to tell Next.js for which parent values pages should be pre-generated, with getServerSideProps, that's simply not an issue, because we run that server-side code for every request anyways. So there is no pre-generation, and therefore no need to define those dynamic paths in advance. I hope that makes sense.